While these assaults on soldiers highlight a disturbing trend within our borders, delays in defense procurement threaten India's security from external threats. Now let's focus on another critical issue affecting our armed forces. On Wednesday, the Cabinet Committee on Security cleared a proposal to buy 307 artillery guns. The Indian Army will buy these advanced towed gun systems or ATAGs from two private firms, Bharat Forge and Tata Advanced Systems, for 7,000 crore rupees. It's one of the largest contracts for an indigenous weapon system placed on the private sector. It's a huge boost for Atmanirbhar Bharat, no two ways about that. But let's look at the timelines of the ATAGs howitzer deal. The DRDO began the ATAGs project in 2012. The first ATAGs guns began their firing trials in 2017, 5 years later. And then it began a series of winter trials and summer trials which lasted 6 years. And then it was up for a decision somewhere around 2022. That's nearly 3 years ago. And that decision was taken on Wednesday, after 9 years of trials and bureaucracy. It took the DRDO and the private sector just 5 years to design and produce the gun, but it took 9 years for a decision to be taken to buy these guns. That, in short, is the major problem facing India's defense acquisition process. It takes a minimum of 7 years to acquire defense equipment, from a boot to a fighter jet. And the Defense Ministry has laid down timelines now to reduce these delays. And joining me now to talk about these is Commodore Arun Golaya, former officer in charge of the Navy's Technology Development Acceleration Cell. Commodore Golaya, welcome to the National Security Agenda.
Thank you.
Commodore Golaya, technology is galloping like a hare, but our acquisition processes are tortoise-paced. Is this the most serious issue affecting national security to your mind?
If not the most serious issue, it is definitely one of the most serious issues. You mentioned the technology is galloping. The pace of change of technology and how fast things are changing means that if you take 9 years or 10 years to induct a thing, by the time you induct it, it's probably already obsolete. The second thing is now with the startups making a foray into the defense field, the startups cannot last that long. So cutting edge innovation is being done by the startups. So what I was saying is that in the previous section you had discussed, about the laws and the implementation. So here again, the timelines which are laid down, if we are reducing them by half, that is certainly a very good step and a very welcome step. But the proof of the pudding would be, in the eating. Even now, the timelines which are laid down are rarely adhered to. So it is not the laws or the intention in this case, but the implementation which is more important. And I've always maintained that it's our procurement rather than our innovation system which needs to be fixed. Once we fix the procurement, the innovation will follow on its own.
Right.
As of today, if I can just make one quick point, as of today, a firm has no incentive for R&D, not only because of the timelines, because even if they do develop a product and if they're the only firm, or what we call the single vendor, you can be sure that, it's not a question of assurance of orders, you're assuring him actually that he'll never get inducted probably. So that is something which I think we need to address. And if we can address the procurement, I think the rest of the things will fall into place.
Right. Very important points there, Commodore Golaya, and you've been, of course, driving all of these acquisitions in the Defense Ministry. But, give us a positive example that India can now look at. Now, the Defense Ministry says they want to cut down those timelines. As you said, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But what lessons can India learn from other countries that have streamlined their defense procurement processes to ensure timely delivery of critical equipment?
So even if you see worldwide, I can give numerous examples. You mentioned about giving a positive example, but even if you take the US context, for example, there have been enough articles and enough reports saying that they also feel that the procurement has not really kept up with the pace of change of technology. You are aware, we are all aware of the Unitex, which was created especially to try and convince the Silicon Valley startups that they need to work with the defense, the DoD, because they felt that they can make as much money from the civil applications, and the defense bureaucracy is far too entrenched for them to make a difference. As far as the Indian context is concerned, we have made some changes. So you mentioned the organization which I used to head, the Technology Development Acceleration Cell. If you note, it's not the Technology Development Cell; it's the Technology Development Acceleration Cell.
Right.
The NIIO is headed, the committee with the vice chief chairs. It's called the Naval Technology Acceleration Council. It's not the Naval Technology Council. The word acceleration was deliberately put because we realized that you need to accelerate. Similarly, the other services also, the Air Force has now set up the DAD, the Army, the ADB is there. The IDEX and specifically IDEX in that IDEX sprint has shown that, if we want to move fast, we can. Not only in development, but also in induction. I mean, the bottom line would be what I said earlier. There is intention and there is implementation. The intention, I have absolutely no doubt. The government's thrust on Atmanirbhar Bharat and the way, the way they're changing things, the intention cannot be doubted. It is the implementation and the fine print which needs, a bit of tweaking, and I'm sure that will happen.
Right.
I don't think
Intention cannot be doubted, but it is the implementation that needs to be looked at very closely. Thank you very much, Kumror Golaya, with your thoughts, for coming in with your thoughts on this need to accelerate India's defense acquisition process.